right, big news evening, and in just a short while from now, we're going to get you all the details of the new family arrangement that the TVS group has released to the stock exchanges. In fact, just a short while ago. So stay tuned for that. But meanwhile, let me bring your focus to the big employment story. And this is something which is very crucial. Remember, employment or the lack of employment has been a pain point and an issue over the last few years in India. Of course, this became even worse after the COVID-19 pandemic, and employment levels plummeted in March, April. So did job offers, wage rates, etc. But there seems to be an improvement. This is a trend which we've been seeing since September. We have been covering it consistently on the show as well. But October and November are showing greater promise. The question is, are we now beginning to plateau out? So let me take you through the 2-3 data sets that have emerged over the last couple of days, and which is why we need a holistic picture. So the Monster Employment Index, for example, says that job postings have improved but are lower year on year by about 6%. Now, on the other hand, the CMIE says that employment in the month of November was down 0.9%, which was slightly more than the month of October of 0.1%, and year on year is down about 2.4%. They say this suggests that maybe the recovery phase that we saw since September may be plateauing out. So that is one slight question mark on it. Team Lease, on the other side, says that hiring intent has improved in the month of November, and they're seeing this across sizes of companies. So not just large companies, but medium companies as well. One interesting thing, they're saying the most interest in hiring in the senior level, which is contrary to the trends that we've been seeing all of this time. Deloitte, on the other hand, says 60% companies are still on a hiring freeze. So what really is the holistic picture that is emerging? To speak on this today, I'm joined by Suraj Moraje. He is the ED and Group CEO of Quess Corp. Gaurav Lahiri, partner, national leader, human capital at Deloitte, is on the show this evening with us, as is Sashi Kumar, MD of Indeed India. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for taking out the time and talking to us today. Suraj, let me come to you first, because so much conflicting data, and it's natural because perhaps everyone's universe that they're tracking is different. But what is the picture that is emerging from your perspective?
Thanks for having me on the show, Tamana. Look, I think this is one of those classic issues where what you see depends on where you sit. And I think that there's obviously a difference between total employment and employment in the formal sector, which is maybe what we have exposure to. And players like Quess we're the largest employer in the country in the formal sector, private sector. We tend to see more of the large enterprises rather than the smaller companies. And I think that what you do see coming out of every recession is that larger companies gain disproportionately to smaller companies. I think what we do see, I mean, there is no doubt that the total stock of jobs in the economy is probably 5 to 10% less still than it was pre-COVID. So we're not back to pre-COVID levels of employment across the country by any means, but we are seeing overall month-on-month growth for sure. I think the Monster data that you mentioned, Monster India, November data shows a gradual rebound, bigger leaps in maybe online retail, IT, which is a big hiring story right now, media, telecom. So we see that. We also see, and I'm happy to talk more about this later, but we see leading players in several industries beginning to ramp up. Be it, quite interestingly, if you look at our hiring database today, we have more field sales demand today than we had in January. And this is after hitting zero in May. So there's much more demand for field sales, especially from larger companies in BFSI, for example, which is hopefully a good predictor of things to come. I'm also happy to, there's other sort of lead indicators like attrition in our associate base is almost back to pre-COVID levels, which means that they're finding somewhere to go to. Attrition almost fell to zero in the middle of lockdown. So voluntary attrition, that's also a good sign. So overall, we are positive that the economy is rebounding, especially around the larger companies. I suspect that there are smaller companies who are finding it in these times, Tamanna, more difficult to access resources. I think the large companies are also more likely to make advanced bets and invest in sort of the build-up before the smaller companies. So this is hopefully a precursor of things to come.
Just the attrition point is very interesting, Suraj, because that's not what I have seen reported anywhere else. Any ballpark figure? You said attrition rates fell to almost zero in March, April at the worst phase of the pandemic. Of course, no one was quitting their job voluntarily at that point. How much has it increased to?
Well, we're pretty much, I think obviously attrition rates differ a lot by function, by level in the hierarchy, but we're pretty much seeing them back to levels. So, in some functions it could be as high as 4% per month, other functions 1 to 2%. But we're certainly seeing that, and we're certainly seeing an increase in our levels of hiring to backfill openings on behalf of our customers, for sure.
Okay, that's really interesting. Gaurav, how do you see this? Is this a glass half full, glass still half empty picture for you? Is this sort of a bump up from September onwards that could peter out? How do you look at the employment scenario from your experience?
So, firstly, thanks again for having me on the show. When Deloitte looks at this, I mean, the first thing is that if you look at the first 90 days when the pandemic hit us, the lockdown, it was unprecedented because everything came to a standstill. Like when we had the GFC in the past, there was just one segment which came to a standstill, but this was one where virtually everything came to a standstill. And that is unprecedented. So you had 90 days where essentially there was a huge amount of pent-up demand, huge amount of pent-up work, which got delayed and postponed. So you saw a spike coming in Q2 because of just the way we had to respond at that point in time, right? So I think it was expected to see increase. The story is extremely different. So I totally echo what Suraj just said, that very different based on sectors. Clearly, IT, we had insurance, we saw pharma, where there was a spike, and within levels we saw in field service, especially customer facing, there was a spike. So that was where it is. But that being said, we still have to deal with probably another 6 to 9 months of a relatively tough phase. So this is kind of the stage when a lot of companies are reflecting on what is the ideal work model. Should it be in office, hybrid, freelancers? So there's a fundamental rethink going on how we work, and I think as that kind of reflection comes to an end and we see a path forward, you'll start to see a more sustainable and longer term growth. I mean, every indicator in the economy is saying that we are headed for a nice 10%-ish type of growth next year, and you will see a good rebound coming in. But I think this is the point, I would say, of pause and reflection after that initial quick reaction. So that's how we see it.
Okay, just to follow up there, Gaurav, when you say 60% companies are still on hiring freeze, and this is some of the data that Deloitte shared with us, and you say 40% companies planning to hire fewer management trainees in 2021, what is the universe? What kind of companies are these?
So, we have about 14 or 15 sectors that we track quite closely. We have, bespoke forums where we talk to, the top 20 companies in those sectors. So we have about, anywhere between 350 to 400 leading organizations that we are tracking on that. So that's our sort of database. It's clearly large companies. We are not looking so much into the smaller and subscale companies at this point in time, but we are looking at the large 350, 400 enterprises.
All right. Sashi, what are the kind of trends you're seeing, especially in, say, the companies which are not the top tier companies, your small and medium companies? Are they looking at hiring once again, and at what levels? What are the kind of jobs that seem to be back in the market?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly walk through the numbers as we see it and then go behind the reasons. At the top level, yes, there is a distinct improvement in the job scenario. In June, year on year, jobs creation was down 51% overall for the market. Now, in November, compared to November last year, we're 18% down. So obviously not completely back, but it's down. Non-tech roles are back to pre-pandemic levels of hiring in India. Tech is still to get back, and there's a reason for it, and I'll come to it quickly in a couple of minutes. Some categories which are doing very well. Construction is actually 33% up from November 2019. Pharmacy is 21.9% up as compared to November 2019. Insurance is 20% up. Production and manufacturing as compared to 2019, November is 6% up. Areas which are not up, which are still doing badly, childcare is 58% down as compared to November 2019. Hospitality and tourism is 54% down as compared to 2019. Social sciences are 43.5% down. Food preparation and services is about 41% down as compared to the same time last year, November last year. So why are we seeing that hiring is not back to pre-pandemic levels in tech? Primarily because I think tech did not fire as many people as we went through the pandemic. They were not hiring too many people. They didn't let go of a lot of people. However, in the non-tech side, we saw quite a few companies let go of people. Therefore, as demand has picked up, they've had to hire back people. That's why we've seen hiring pick up in the last couple of months in those sectors. Similarly with SMB, we are seeing some pretty good activity in SMBs in terms of hiring pickup. That's also because a lot of these SMBs had to let go of people in the peak of the lockdown. But now as they see demand reviving, they're able to, they need to hire back people to get business going. So broadly, those are the top level trends that we are seeing.
Suraj, let me come to, a very interesting aspect we spoke about when we talked last, which was in October, where you had already seen a pickup. So two things, you saw a pickup restricted to some sectors and some cities which were tier 2 cities. Do you see that continuing? For example, Chandigarh, I see again, seems to have more hiring. Why is that?
I think that to a large level, it's quite interesting. You look at the October versus November data, like Ahmedabad was up there in October, it's gone in November, it's not there. Bangalore was not doing that well in October, but it seems to have had a surge of activity through the October-November period. I think that the sense I'm getting is that the rate of recovery, in a sense, is proportionate to the depth and breadth of the lockdown and of the shutdown linked to COVID. And I think the cities that have been worse impacted are the cities that are taking the longest to recover. And in a sense, I feel what we're starting to see in cities like Bangalore and other tier 2 cities is people realizing that the fear of the second wave maybe is starting to pass us by, or maybe it's receding. Our experience, I think, for the people who are going back to work, I personally have been in the office 3 to 4 days a week, right from July, August. Today, it's quite interesting. 2 months ago, and I get this data across our core employees every day, we had about 34% of our employees who are either working in the office or working at client site. That number is up to almost about 50% now. So people are feeling a bit more confident in some of these cities that we can get back to work, and the possibility of an effective vaccine also seems more and more likely. We were talking about this earlier, Tamanna. I think that's also playing up. So I think the better we're able to manage the COVID numbers, the quicker some of these cities will recover, and I think that's what we're seeing.
Gaurav, What are the trends you're seeing in terms of wages? Jobs returning is one part of the picture. The question is at what wage rates for that level and for that specific function? Is it quote unquote a buyer's market right now, an employer's market? Have wages been depressed or continued to be depressed, and are positions being filled in or replacements being filled in at lower levels of wages?
So, the answer is pretty similar to the job story as well. And it's a function of, the level of skill complexity, right? I mean, the more complex and on demand the skill, the lesser the impact on the compensation, on the role, and so on and so forth. So if you look at a broader universe, clearly all our data points are suggesting significantly lower, average increases next year, and probably, and it'll of course vary by sectors and levels, but generally it'll be lower increases next year. So that's kind of the universe. But if you kind of look at it from the lens of skills, you will find that the more advanced the skills, so things that are in the entire digital transformation of a company, things like AI, ML, all those sort of skills are becoming vital, or just advanced management skills, right? Because at this point there's also heightened need for better management and leadership when you're sitting virtually and leading large enterprises. It just requires a higher order of skill. So high skill roles will continue to see demand. I mean, even if I look at it in-house within Deloitte, I mean, right now we are desperately trying to hire, and it's in specific pockets, whether it is in the S4HANA area or it is in, advanced analytics. So wherever it's kind of, high skill areas, we are desperately short, and willing to pay, a premium for that skill. But wherever it's kind of more repetitive work, where the need for skills are not that high, it is a buyer's market. So yeah, that's how we see it.
Sashi, what is the kind of, sorry, please finish. You were saying something?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Sashi, what is the sort of outlook you see for the first quarter or so of 2021? Do you see it picking up with the factor of the vaccine rollout? I think we are not paying enough attention to what kind of an impact that will have on overall sentiment and hopefully jobs as well. We've been talking about how the big dampener and the big question mark could be a resurgence of COVID-19 cases. We seem like we may be able to have a minimal impact of a second wave, and possibly, if we're very, very lucky, avoid a big one in any case. Would that be a game changer in your view to employment levels, to formal jobs and the kind of jobs that will be out there?
So I think the vaccine availability will have an unequal impact on certain categories of jobs. We've not seen a significant uptick in tourism, in aviation, in food and beverage service, etc. Once the vaccine comes, I'm sure there is a lot of pent-up demand. I'm sure all of us are looking forward to going to a holiday, right? So all of that pent-up demand will come, and I'm pretty sure they will bounce back much more faster. With most of the rest of the sectors, I think in a very good way, we've learned to live with this. So today we are able to deal with it. We know how to go about things. So I don't think there'll be any reversal. I think sectors that have improved, for example, construction, sales, etc., we will continue to see that momentum go up, and especially technology. I think IT services, as I said, haven't gone back to pre-pandemic levels. I do believe that will definitely improve in the next quarter, and as we go by, which will be sort of independent of the vaccine rollout. I think the biggest impact we will see once of the vaccine will be in high-touch industries, like your retailing, like food and beverage service, like aviation, like hospitality and tourism, like childcare. So as more and more companies open up and people start going back into offices, demand for childcare, which has been very muted, will also pick up significantly.
Yeah. So a lot hinges on how the vaccine rollout takes place in the next 2 to 3 months, how the COVID numbers also behave. But meanwhile, some sectors seem to be having stellar performance. Retail, one of them, which has really jumped up. IT and IT services has been the king throughout. So that's a different story. And of course, all digital skills in high demand right now. So things are looking good. They're not yet back at 2019 levels or pre-COVID levels. And we have to remember 2019 levels were not optimal either. So that is an important perspective to add to the picture. But we can say that things look like they are getting better. With that, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the big discussion this evening on the India Development Debate.
Thank you.